Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hogg. Joining us this week on the podcast is another friend of the show, and that is she was introduced to us by our friend Arliss. And of course, when I was introduced to her through email, just seeing a little bit of her background, I was just absolutely uh, floored by what she does, and I was like, oh, this would be perfect to have this guest on here for our audience, and I'm excited to hear more about her. She is a public speaker, a author, a coach, and she's also a fellow podcaster as a co-host of the Body Positivity podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Miss Diana Gremillion. Hey, Diana, welcome.
Hey, Nolan. It's so great to be here with you today.
Diana, this has been kind of like a reoccurring theme for us here on the podcast where Arliss introduces us to like really amazing people. And I don't know, I don't meet them in person until we're here on the recording of the podcast. And it always turns out to be these fascinating conversations. And I took a quick look at some of your bio on your website, and you've had quite the amazing journey through your life to get you to this point where now you're a public speaker and coach and author. Um, can you share with me a little bit about, where this passion for helping others was born from? Because you're really helping a lot of people find some wonderful things in how to make their lives better, whether it's through food or through business or life. And it's just a unique direction that you've chosen to take your life in. Where did that come from?
Hmm. So my parents are immigrants and from the Philippines, and I think that from a very young age, I don't know about you, Nolan, but I just had this perception of waste where I didn't want to
Mm,
waste anything. And I would see my mom be creative. She wasn't a good cook, but she was always creative with the ingredients that she had and made the most of what it was that she had in life. And for better or worse, I've had my share of crisis. I'm a 9/11
mm.
survivor. I have a deadly peanut
Oh, wow.
allergy. I lost my job in the global financial crisis. I, experienced such extreme burnout that I actually had to give up my culinary career. Been through depression, uh, been on a plane when a window in the cockpit shattered and had to use an emergency oxygen mask. So
Oh
I've
my
had
gosh.
I've had my share of things that could look like what I call manure. And
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that we can either look at it as a stinking pile, or we can look at
Hmm.
it as something that is fertilizer for our next dreams. And I'd say, with it being rather close to the last anniversary of 9/11, I
Yeah.
always think a lot about that day because I was just a kid. I was in high school on the day, um, 2 blocks away, and I remember going to school that morning thinking that everything was normal, thinking about the things that a senior girl in high school would be thinking about, senior prom and what am I going to wear that day and where am I going to apply to college? And my whole life had been around this plan that other people had created for me. And that day, the plan kind of blew up, right? And everything that
Mm,
everyone had told me, or, I realized that all the adults who I thought knew better and who were helping me and lead this plan, I realized, maybe they don't actually know. And maybe there was something else because clearly life was short. And if that
yeah.
was going to be the day that I was going to go, would I have actually lived a life that I wanted? And so back to waste, I just realized I didn't want to waste my life. And so at
Wow.
these moments where I've had the experience of feeling challenged by different things, I went to business school, started working on Wall Street, then the global financial crisis happened. They actually closed the department I was in, folded us into another department that wasn't really a good fit for me. So I knew that the writing was on the wall that I wasn't going to really last or do the work that I was doing for the long term. And honestly, I didn't really love making Walmart and McDonald's richer. So there
Mm,
was just something about the work I was doing that was kind of out of alignment too. And I actually remember the day that my boss got fired. And I worked till late that night, and I was waiting for, because when you work in banking and like you work to a certain hour, part of like the perks or whatever is like you get a car home if you're staying past like 9 p.m., which, like, I'd wake up, I'd go to work at like and be there at 7, definitely was there until 9 p.m. And on this particular day, when my boss got laid off, I remember looking at the ground and feeling really hopeless, thinking about what my next steps were going to be. And while I was looking at the ground, I noticed like a little sprout, like coming out of a crack in the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I felt really lost and kind of hopeless in that moment, I saw that sprout, and just for the first time, even though that's something you see all the time on the streets of New York, I felt inspired, and I was like, wow, that little sprout, that little seed of life broke through cement in seeking life, in seeking expansion and growth. What is it that I could break through if I just followed my heart, if I followed what brought me
Mm-hmm.
life? And that led me to think about culinary school. If the life and the profession of a person who works as a chef is very different from a person who works on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Salary, quality of life, like all of it is very different. But I was like, I have always had a passion for cooking. And even on these nights when I come home 10, 11 o'clock, I want to bake something or I want to cook something. So there's clearly some form of energy behind this that is special. And even though it doesn't make any sense, I thought back to that day on 9/11, realizing, life is short. Do I really want to waste it? And decided, I'm going to become a chef. I'm going to follow my dreams. And in following that passion, that was how I ended up meeting my husband, moving to San Francisco, cooking for President Obama when he came into the restaurant where I was working at. So I
Wow.
never would have had any of those experiences if I had just looked at my life and made decisions that maybe other people would have. But by making
Mm-hmm.
decisions that were really more understanding that I didn't want to waste my life and that I really wanted to live it to the fullest is part of what's helped me do things that maybe other people might feel scared of. Because really, like, this gift, we don't, it's not forever. And I know folks who've passed away, and I don't want to, I don't want to have gotten to the end of my life and realize that I didn't live it. So
Yeah.
making some of those scary decisions for me has been a little less scary because I'm moving forward with the knowledge that this is my one life and I don't know how long it lasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I deserve to live it to the fullest while it's available to me. Um, so yeah, so that I think that perspective of just not wanting to waste, not only
Yeah.
my own life but also the sacrifices my parents made in moving here as immigrants. The hardships that they faced, the dreams that they had for their children. I think a lot of times when I think about life, I really come from that place of not wanting to waste these precious resources that we've been given.
Why did so when your parents brought you here to America, did you go straight to New York?
They moved. So my mom moved first, and then my dad moved, and then they actually had me in New York.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and yeah, my mom was actually the first of her whole family to move to the U.S. and to follow her dreams. So she impacted so many people as well by
Wow.
making the choice to follow her dream. And I love that because I think that that's what I've had the chance to do is show
Yeah.
people as I follow my dreams, to give them the courage to follow theirs too.
What were her dreams as far as what was her intentions of moving to America to pursue?
Um, I think she really just wanted a better life for her kids. Like she saw corruption and other things that she didn't really want to be a part of or continue to live in the
Yeah.
Philippines, and she wanted a different life for her kids. And she knew too that there were ways that we'd be limited in our experiences, like lots of opportunities to stay in the Philippines, but at the same time there were ways that we'd be limited in our worldview staying
Mm-hmm.
there. So my mom was always a person who was a proponent of us going out on our own, of not just staying close to home,
Mm-hmm.
but to truly explore the world. Like, I remember before she and my dad were able to travel, they would send me on trips with friends. If my friends were going somewhere like Jamaica or the Dominican Republic, she would send me on trips with them, even if she couldn't
Wow.
be there with us, because she valued that experience of seeing different cultures and learning from different places. So I feel like she was very, very much like a person who encouraged us to step outside of our comfort zone, to discover something new for ourselves.
Hmm. Did you find that it was hard or difficult to kind of be in the situation where you were born in America and you're surrounded by, these American experiences and values, and then, but being a child of immigrants who are deeply enriched in their culture from their home. Was there a difficult balance, or it sounds like your mom's also just been so encouraging of you spreading, your experiences and knowledge that you might not have experienced that kind of, confusion and difficulty that some other, children of immigrants have experienced in their growing up in America with immigrant parents. What was it like for you?
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think that her dream was a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? Where it's like
Yeah, yeah.
she wanted for her kids to grow up with a different perspective, but that meant very different from the perspective that she grew up with and the expectations that she had for her children. So
Right,
I think my parents were thrilled when my career was in banking and I was earning six figures and, helping Walmart and McDonald's and those sort of companies. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. And then for me to be the person who blew all that up and was like, nope, mom and dad, I'm going to culinary school. I definitely sent them on a couple roller coaster rides. Um, you know, because just like my mom, I was that outspoken, independent, free thinker, and she grew up in a place where that was encouraged to a different degree than I was encouraged growing up in the U.S. And
right.
so, I think it was what she wished for, and she got what she wished for. But there were probably many times where my dad was like, "You asked for this, honey." You know what I mean? Like I can't
Yeah.
imagine that was her experience. But I think it's that experience too of letting go of your expectation or letting go of what you think something's going to be. um,
Yeah.
because I think through that, like really the life that I've built is so much greater than if I just would have kept advising corporations and how to, in the work that I used to do. Like now I get to help a lot of small business owners and immigrants, and I work a lot in healing work because I've been myself through many crisis and trauma. So
Yeah.
while it may not have been the picture that she had, she definitely got her dream.
Yeah. Well, that is so great to hear though, because so many times parents they really have a tunnel vision of what is right for their children, but in a way, as much as that they thought she probably was like, "Oh no, what are you doing?" Um, she instilled and ingrained in you this belief that you have to follow your passions and dreams, and that's what she did in moving to America. Which I'm sure there are people back at home that are questioning, like, "Why are you going to do that? That's such a scary thing," right? So, it's really neat to see how your life evolved from that little seed that she planted in you.
Yeah. And it's evidence as well that you can plant the seed and set the intention, but the seed grows wild.
Yeah. It's
You
like,
don't have
I wanted
control
a
of how
yellow flower, but I got a red one. It's like, too bad.
yeah,
That's what you get.
yeah. And I mean, I think at the end of it that my parents are proud of what I've done and the work that I do. But I
Yeah.
definitely say that it's not probably what they would have expected. I know that
Hmm.
my dad didn't say it to me at the time, but like when I left banking, I know that he was like, what's wrong with making six figures?
Yeah.
Like what's wrong with this life that she's already got? Like why is she blowing it up and going to work for $10 an hour and like, in difficult conditions and doing all this? But again, it was about following passion. It was about following my heart and knowing that there were blessings that were beyond what I could have ever designed. I think, I was definitely that kid who wanted to plan all of life. So I had
Hmm.
I had a plan when I was, before 9/11, where I was like, okay, live on the Upper East Side, brownstone, wealthy husband, I'll be wealthy, like 2.5 kids, like we all have these ideas
Yeah.
of who we're going to be. Um, and when I saw those plans or those expectations kind of go up in smoke, I wasn't a person who ever took that as a bad thing. I was like, all right, well, what am I going to build out of this? So every
Mhm.
time whatever I've had has been demolished or destroyed, or my future plans kind of killed. Like even when I burned out and got so sick that I what is it called? Well, even when I got so burned out and sick that like I couldn't be a chef anymore, I love to
Mhm.
share that because I was so passionate about cooking that even though my body was starting to demonstrate that there was a problem and that I needed to stop and that stress was a problem, I kept going because I was passionate. And it took
Mhm.
me so far to a point where now I can't even do that work because I injured my body where I can't stand for 12 hours anymore. I can't do that work. And I think that's important because I think a lot of times, we think it's just about following passion and we just have to keep working hard. And
Yeah.
and with immigrant parents, that was definitely something that they valued. It was like, oh, just
Right.
keep working hard, doing these things. And I started to realize, I've been working hard, and I'm smart. I know these things, but somehow it's still a struggle for me. Somehow here I am again with another dream that like and future plans. Like my husband is a chef also. We had plans of opening restaurants together, doing all these things, and I killed that because I wasn't listening to my own body. And so
Mm.
that's actually
Yeah.
a little bit of why Arliss and I share in the Body Positivity podcast about loving our bodies and honoring our bodies and taking care of them, because I made the mistake of not, and I lost a passion, a career that I absolutely loved. And yes, I built another one out of it. But if I can share that story and other people can realize that, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's not worth it to push themselves that hard all the time, that they can save themselves and keep doing what it is that they love in that way. And if not, hey,
Yeah.
you can still rebuild.
Yeah. I think it's important what you're teaching others as far as maybe rewiring their expectations or understanding of what success and happiness is, because I think we've been built to believe that you got to work yourself to the bone and sacrifice of yourself um, for what you want when in especially in your story it took away what you wanted and it actually worked against you. So I think what you're teaching others now is so valuable and important because we don't hear those kind of messages that you're talking about right now. And
No.
if we do, it's too late. It's like after when we're trying to pick up the pieces. Um, so I really admire that you've been able to take your experiences and formulate this new path in helping others recognize that it's a very valuable piece of life lesson that I think would be really beneficial for a lot of us these days.
Yeah, I think especially growing up with Filipino immigrant parents, that mantra of work hard, work hard, work hard
Yeah.
is very much pushed. And I don't have anything against working or hard
Yeah.
work,
Or hard
but
work. Yeah.
because obviously like for me to achieve the things I have in life, like all that, like those take work for sure. But I think that we have to temper the message and really consider, what am I working for?
Mm,
And what's the purpose of this? And if we're working hard, are we doing it in a way that it's truly serving us? And are we using hard work where it needs to be used, or are we just
yeah.
working hard? Because I think a lot of times immigrants have this perception that hard work equals success. And I don't know about you, Nolan, but I know a lot of hardworking immigrants, a lot of hardworking blue collar
Yeah.
workers who are not the picture of success that some people
Right.
have. And so to me, it's like, it's not just hard work. It's about working smarter. It's about really understanding and knowing why we're working. And I think our dreams are a big part of that. I think our dreams are something that we absolutely should work for. But I think a lot of times too, we get clouded by that perception of what other people think of as success, right? Like my dad saying,
Mm-hmm.
"What's wrong with a six-figure career?" You know, like what's and like the work. I knew so many. I have a younger brother and sister. I knew so many of their friends who looked up to me and admired me because they were like, "Wow, she has this like amazing boyfriend who's like also going to be wealthy and like she's making six feet." You know, there's so many people who glorified the life that I was living, and I was like, and I think I really just am grateful that I've had these experiences where I can show people, you know, it's not just about that. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much more to life um, beyond just meeting somebody else's expectations for success. There's success that
Mm-hmm.
we ourselves can build when we're following our dreams, when we're dancing, you know, when we're writing, when we're doing the things that we love. And those dreams, when we put our hard work behind those, I think that's a place where that value of hard work really can shine through in a way that allows for us to excel beyond just being nurses and lawyers, and you know, unless that's
Right.
your passion, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I think when we're following our passion though, that there's just so much more life available to us, right? And I think
Yeah.
back to that little sprout in the sidewalk, where it's like for that sprout to have the life and to have the force to really keep moving, what is it that gives us energy in that way? You know, like what is it that
Mm-hmm.
we're passionate about that lights us up, that you know we can't stop thinking about? Those are important questions and things for us to know about.
So what initially was it about, finance and that career that got you started in that direction early on in your life? Was it from high school, or was there something that inspired you to pursue that career initially?
Oh yeah, I love math. I
Oh,
love math. I
okay.
love business. I love money. I love like it's why now I love serving business owners and I love helping people build their
Gotcha.
dream business because I still loved business and I still loved all those things. I love that I get to use this experience that you know maybe helped Fortune 500 companies in the past and I get to apply it to small businesses. Like I think that's amazing. I love that part of
Yeah.
my work. But I had to also see that the way that I was doing it before wasn't full didn't feel fully right. You know, I didn't like
Yeah.
making certain companies wealthier when I felt like there was so much more that could be done for women, for BIPOC, for immigrants, for other trauma survivors. Um, and so that was really like I've always loved math, and part of the reason I think is because I'm actually a really negative thinker naturally. Um,
Which is odd because you're,
yeah,
inspiring others.
yeah. But so that's actually why like I think I'm able to help a lot of people is because I come more from this negative place. I was a person who always saw the problem, and what I loved about math
uh,
was that there's always a solution. You
right.
just have to follow a process. You
Hmm.
just have to follow the process. And so that was what I loved about it. It's like, okay, I've got a problem. It seems like it's impossible to solve, but if I just follow the process, I'll find a way to solve it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that kind of attitude towards thing has always been something that I've held myself where it's like, okay, I just need this problem, you know, losing my job in the global financial crisis. This is just a problem. There's a process to solving this. You know, there's a way, there's a solution here. And that sort of attitude just always helped me think about, okay, I just have to find the solution. I just have to find the way to find the solution. And now that I get to work with business owners, with leaders, in times of crisis, I still carry that belief. And I know that even in our darkest times, even in these places where it seems like there's no hope, where it feels like we're just like buried in darkness, you know, what if again we're not being buried, we've actually been planted? And
Oh, wow.
what
That's
if
so
what it
beautiful.
is for us to start to move towards our light,
Yeah.
towards this expansion, you know? And that's what I believe is possible for us, but not if we want to just stay stuck and keep up with that negative mindset of like, well, I'm just stuck in this stinking heap of manure, you know? Like
Right.
if we have that kind of attitude, there's nothing growing around us. But if instead we're like, wow, what can I plant in here? What future dream can I build in this fertile soil that I've been handed,
Hmm.
that I'm in right now? There's so much more that's available to us.
That is so beautiful. It's so often that we hear about, people relating their experiences or feelings of like being in darkness, but for you to be able to kind of add a little addendum to that, in that the darkness might be because you're just being planted. Oh, it adds so much life. That's such a life-giving perspective,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad that you shared that with us. That's super cool.
Yeah. And I've
For
had enough darkness in life
Yeah,
where like I'm not afraid of it. You know what I mean? And it's why I think a lot of times when I work with folks, I'm not shy about sharing my hard times or any of those or the feelings I had in them. And I think that helps people also feel safe in knowing like you can go through something really horrific. You can go through experiences where it feels like your whole world has crumbled around you, and that's still not the end. You still get to write another chapter.
yeah. Speaking of dark times, what you mentioned being a survivor of 9/11, what was what are some things that you experienced through that for people around, that you would want them to understand, because I think it's been, like you said, almost, it's like 20 years, and I think people sometimes forget the significance of it, or don't realize, the significance of it, as much as they did back when it happened. And so much has happened since then that, they've maybe changed their perspective on it. What are some things that through your experience, um, that you would want people to understand about that, or to maybe get some inspiration from?
Yeah. Well, I'll share two things. So the first is that I actually don't have a lot of memory of the day,
Oh, wow.
and um, I have moments that I remember, but for the most part, I don't remember a lot of it. And sometimes when we've had really horrific, traumatic events happen to us, it seems like we can't heal unless we remember. There's a lot of cognitive behavior therapy and things like that, where like they force us to re-remember these things that we may
Yeah.
not want to remember. And in some of the healing modalities that I share with my clients that I use um, in my practice that are effective not just with PTSD, but also with like limiting beliefs, anxiety, depression, um, is that like we don't have to remember in order to be able to heal ourselves. And how we can start to heal ourselves is actually by understanding that we are not just mind body, but we're also mind body energy. And when we can think about and when we can kind of put like a little bit of distance between how we see or experience our trauma or what we've been through, we can actually still heal from it when we understand, and can kind of open ourselves up to healing and know that it's not impossible. So I just want to share for anybody who has been through something where they don't necessarily want to remember, like,
Yeah.
you're not alone. You're not alone in not wanting to remember, but that doesn't mean that you can't heal. The healing is still possible, transformation is still possible. And honestly, I think it's incredibly important because as long as we just keep hiding it or saying we're fine or thinking
Hmm.
like, oh, as long as I don't remember, I'm fine, we're actually just burying something. And when we have our pile of manure and we're just covering it up with a carpet, it doesn't mean it
Yeah.
doesn't stink, right? It
Right.
doesn't
Right.
mean that it's not there still affecting our life. So I have found that even with those memories of horrific things that can happen, we can still go through and experience healing. Now, the second thing I want to share actually happened. So it was really interesting. When I was working as a chef and got burned out, one of the restaurants that I helped manage was actually the cafe at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember one day, like, so how I started to realize that I had repressed memories and like trauma, because I was that person. I never wanted to identify as a 9/11 survivor. There were people who
Interesting.
saw way worse than I did, who experienced way worse than what I did, and I was like, those are the survivors. I'm not a survivor. I'm
Hmm.
fine, And I think I share that because I think a lot of times we don't want to. We equate being a survivor with some form of weakness. So I didn't
Yeah.
identify as one. And it wasn't until one day, I'm managing, I'm helping the cafe out. And they're like, "Oh, we have a little break. Why don't you go down into the museum and like check it out, whatever." I'm walking through, literally like start to have like a panic attack while I'm down there. And I was like, I got to get out of here as soon as humanly possible, because, just seeing seeing the beams, seeing like certain things triggered me in a way that I just didn't
Wow.
feel safe. And here I was in a place where I was supposed to go back to work and be professional. So that started to show me, like that there were, even in this place where I had repressed memories or things that I didn't want to remember, that it still clearly was affecting me.
Yeah.
And with it clearly affecting me, it was worthwhile for me to heal. But as I kind of, I burned out and was leaving that job, I knew I was going to move to Hawaii. There was one day when it was like one of the last times I was at the memorial. And have you ever been to the memorial, Nolan?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So it's basically just like the remnants of what's there, since they kind of gutted the towers. And so it's like it's a
Yeah.
big black, deep, dark hole. And being in that place where I'd burned out, where I realized, I couldn't continue in my career as a chef because I'd injured my body to that point where I was rebuilding, but I still didn't know what it was that I was creating. I felt like that deep dark hole. I felt like I was in that place where I was at the bottom there, hopeless, like looking up, like there's no way out of this kind of situation. And as I was there, I actually heard a man ask a tour guide, like, why is this hole so deep? And the tour guide responded, well, the reason that this hole is so deep is that for a skyscraper to rise so high, it actually requires a very deep foundation. Because if it
Mm.
doesn't have that deep foundation, being that high, it leaves itself so vulnerable to different things above ground that could shake it, that could sway it, that could destroy it. But if it has this deep foundation, then the building can stay grounded. Then it can soar and be safe to soar that high. And so thinking of myself down at the very bottom there, I thought about, wow, what if instead of me being here in this place where I can't get out, where like it just feels like the light is so far from me, what if instead I'm here because I have the chance to build a deeper foundation?
Mm.
What if I'm
Wow.
here to build a skyscraper? What if I take this experience and don't feel devastated by it, but actually use it as a time to rebuild?
Mm.
And that's what I
Yeah.
think is true for us when we're in that deep, dark hole, when we feel like the light is so far away from us, when it feels like hope is impossible. If instead we can look at it as an opportunity to rebuild, to build a strong foundation so that we can soar, it gives us purpose in that place. It gives us a reason to continue on. And it was my reason to keep going. I was like, I'm going to build this life. I'm going to build this life in Hawaii. I'm going to finally open the businesses I've always talked about. I'm going to transform my health. I'm going to do all these things that I've never seen possible. I'm naturally introverted and shy and socially awkward. So being an international speaker was so far from anything I ever thought was possible for me. And it never would have been possible if I didn't look at that opportunity to build a new foundation. So that's what I think we can do when we're in that deep dark hole, when we feel like everything around us has been destroyed. It's like maybe it was destroyed so we can rebuild. What if we
Yeah.
can build even stronger, even more beautiful, even more purpose than we'd ever had before?
That is so great because I mean, especially what we as the world have been going through in the last 2, 3 years, like
Yeah.
there's been so many examples of that where you can choose to either take it as like, oh, this everything we know and love is ruined, or hey, this is an opportunity to build the foundation for the next new thing. And it's so interesting that so many key points in your life, there have been like these visual things that spark these amazing, thoughts and perspectives and inspirations for you. It's like it's almost as if like there's some kind of, like spotlight, like signal, like, hey, Diana, look at this. Now what? And then you just go, oh, here it is. It's really incredible that all of this kind of has lined up like that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all have those experiences in life, but we don't necessarily see them as opportunities for hope. Like, I mean, I don't know how many times you've probably walked by something grow like a crack in the sidewalk and just thought it was nothing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or like passed by something that looked like a hole and just thought it was nothing. And we can walk through life and say it means nothing, and as that
Right.
more science-based analytical person, I can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Or we can choose to see something more, and I think it has so much to do with our choice and perspective. Um, but I will say, because I mentioned earlier, I have a deadly peanut allergy. There
Hmm.
have been a lot of times where, like, I didn't know if I was going to survive, right?
Wow.
And what that means for me is that I started to learn a lot about how to trust and listen to myself, not just to listen to the noise from outside, but to start to
Hmm.
cultivate this relationship with my own intuition. So actually, when I saw that, like, that crack in the sidewalk, one of the things I heard as I was thinking about, what am I going to do next? Am I going to work at a hedge fund? Am I going to go back to business school? Like, what am I going to do? I heard from my intuition that day, and it said, if you go back to school, it's going to be culinary school. And even in the moment when my husband and I decided to move to Hawaii, like, I had a feeling or a knowing for myself that, like, if I never moved to Hawaii, I would regret my life. And those are very
Mm.
strong words, but that was how my intuition came to me and what it said to me. And I didn't know how or didn't know what, but I also had lived through enough life to know that this had been something that saved me in those moments that could have been really dangerous. So I,
Hmm.
I did learn how to listen to that inner voice, even when it didn't make sense, um, because it had been something that, like, really saved me.
Yeah. Have you had experiences where you heard it but you ignored it and you saw what the results were, or, whether good or bad, or have you always just naturally inclined to follow your intuition from the jump?
No, I wouldn't say it's natural to follow your intuition at all. Um,
Yeah.
but what I did was, I mean, I think there were lots of signs. If I think about it, reflecting back, um, my body was giving me a lot of signs that I needed to stop when I was a chef and burning out. And because I was so passionate and because I loved it so much, I was like, no, I'm going to keep going. I love what I'm doing. It's so much fun. Like, I feel so rewarded in this work. Um, and so it really took until I started losing my hair that I was like, okay, something is wrong. And even when I spoke to people around me about something being wrong, like, other folks in the culinary industry, they were like, oh yeah, you're losing your hair, you just need to get the shots, the steroid shots to your head, and then your hair will start to grow back and it'll be fine. And I was like, wow, your definition of fine is very different from my definition of fine. I don't think that this is a normal thing. I mean, I was in my early 30s at the time. I was like, I don't think it should be that I have as much disease as, like, a 60-year-old woman, and that I'm fine just because I can alleviate the symptoms or, hide the problem. There's
Right.
something deeper here. So I definitely did not listen to my body or to my intuition,
Mm.
at that time, and it cost me. It cost me to not listen to what was really going on within me. And again, it's part of why, like, I think it's important for me to share that. And even though I am naturally introverted and socially anxious, like, in first time on stage, actually literally froze in front of lights where I was like, like,
Oh
so
no.
scared. Yeah, right. Like, but it helped
What
me
was this for?
realize. Um, so I had, I was in the process of getting certified as a coach, and I got, we were our exercise was to share a story with three other people that we were working with, about a specific lesson that we would teach. And so I don't remember what the lesson was or any of those kind of things, but we all went around, told our story, and we were in this coaching place where they're encouraging us to start to say yes to the things we'd love, even if we don't know how. um,
Right.
and we all come back together as a larger group. They like, okay, we have a couple people who we'd like to call up, whatever. And my name got called, and before I had a chance to think about going on stage, I was just like, yes.
Yeah.
you know
Right.
and I get up there, I'm in front of 300 people, the lights are on me, right? And like they start to all of a sudden feel like really, really hot, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like really, really nervous. I see cameras and I'm just like, I feel like the blink of my eye is just like so loud.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm like silent. But I kept going and finished the story, and I was humiliated, Nolan. I was like, oh my God, that was
Oh.
like the worst thing ever. How could I have done that? Like, I just felt so terrible. I ran to the bathroom to just like hide. And there was a woman who found me in there and with tears streaming down her eyes was like, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh.
That touched me so much. And I was like, what, the part where I like froze for 15 seconds, because of course me, right, being more of a negative thinker, I'm focused on all
Yeah.
the imperfection and like everything that went wrong. And she was like, what? No, like your story touched me so much. Thank you so much for sharing it. And it made me realize like I have so many stories about life, about these things that have happened to me that can help other people. And I don't have to be perfect in telling them. I just have to be brave.
Hmm.
And so that's why I tell the stories. That's why, even if it's hard for me, I do the work because it is something that has a greater purpose. And it
Yeah.
makes these moments that have been incredibly painful or dark, it turns them into something light. It turns them into hope. And especially now, like you said, with the pandemic, it's all the more important that people have a glimmer of hope, have a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
And so, as scared as I am, I still am in that process of sharing my stories and doing all that work. But it's just very important to me that I face that fear and that I serve, what I've been given because I don't want to waste it. I don't want it just to be that these things happen to me and that they stay buried and that nobody gains any value or purpose from them. Like when I tell my story, somebody gains value. And that is
Yeah.
something that's really important. And I think so many of us are conditioned to not share the ugly, not
Yeah.
not to share the difficulty. But that's the thing that makes us more human than anything. I think it's
Yeah. That's what
important to share.
yeah, that's what I think has been changing from what I've seen
Yeah.
in public communications in the in somewhat in the media is that we used to think that if you're going to put yourself out there, whether it's in person or through behind a camera, that you have to be put up this pristine, perfect, well thought out image and such. Um, but nowadays, it feels like if someone presents that, you go, "All right, what are they hiding? Like, I don't trust this or I don't resonate with it." And it's becoming, I think, more celebrated when people can be honest and celebrate the
Yeah.
whole story versus just highlight the positives. Have you noticed that in your sharing of your stories and your struggles and whatnot, that even as much as you're helping others, that when you share your stories, no matter how many times you share them, that there's something that you'll either gain or learn from it that you didn't initially, or even the responses that you get from audience members when they share with you what they get, it's like, oh, I didn't realize that. Like, do you
Yeah.
still get that kind of a experience?
Absolutely. I think it's a part of my healing to
Oh.
share the stories, and I think, I'm loving what you're saying too about how people are less and less interested in that perfect image projection and far more
Yeah.
interested in like who you really are as a person,
Right.
and I think that it's like that's what we connect to is when somebody has been through
Hmm.
something we've been through, especially because there has been this culture in the past of hide that, right? Like of don't talk about being depressed, don't talk about like
Hmm.
being a survivor, don't talk about what you've been through, show them who you are now. But like you said, I think more and more that does not really resonate with people, and that sometimes the best way to help people is for them to be able to see you in that moment of difficulty because they that gives them hope more than you being on top of the mountain,
Yeah.
to know that there's a path from where they are in that deep dark hole to the top of the mountain. That is hope. You know what I mean?
Right.
That is something that like changes people and changes the way that they look at the world. And so again, the only way I cannot look at the things that happen to me as bad is by seeing, okay, there was a greater purpose behind this. There's
Mm.
there's something to give out of this. there's a new dream, there's something new that can grow in this fertilizer. It's not just a pile of manure. It's not just, something to be thrown away. It's a gift. But
Yeah.
and Nolan and I always say this when it comes to things that look rotten, right? Like if you look
Hmm.
at some of our favorite foods, right? Cheese, wine, chocolate, coffee. These are all ingredients where something had to happen to them, where they changed. They went through a fermentation process in order to develop flavors that are out of this world. So we
Yeah.
can't, our life ingredients, like we look at them and we think, oh, this is rotting, this is trash, this is
Mm.
garbage. But I actually see treasure. I see an opportunity where if we know how to skillfully transform these things that we've been given, that we can create something that has out of this world flavor beyond anything that even Mother Nature could have created on her own. It's for us to discover that process, to make our own form of cheese, to make our own, wine in some way with the ingredients we've been given in life. And I think it's again goes back to that concept I learned from my parents of not wanting to waste it. You know, how
Yeah.
can we take these things that we've been given? All of us have something in life that looks rotten. But what if instead of seeing it as a rotten ingredient, it's actually an opportunity for us to transform that flavor, to add sweetness to the bitterness, to give it more nuance and texture. And that's what chefs do. We take these ingredients that look like trash, right? Like if you have you ever watched Top Chef?
Yeah.
So like how sometimes they have to make something that's like
It's,
good
it's
out of like garbage,
yeah. It's like, what do you
right?
expect to do with that stuff?
Right? And like you look at it and you're like, what the heck am I gonna make with this? And a lot of times, right, like the chef who's the most successful in that is the one who's the most open to seeing, okay, what's the good in here?
Mm.
What can I extract? What are the qualities of this ingredient that looks like garbage that I can actually amplify and bring balance to? Right? And so that's what they're
Yeah.
doing. They're adding that sweetness, the richness, the whatever that ingredient needs so that it can shine. And they're not hiding it, they're not covering it up, they're making something more out of it. And that's what we have to do too, or the opportunity we have in
Yeah.
life to make more out of what we've been given.
I love that, and I am going to use that next time my wife complains to me about how I'm not doing something right. I'm just going to tell her, "Hey, honey, I'm fermenting so that I can be a sweeter, more richer experience for you."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the truth is, Nolan, right? We're neither of us, no matter what we've been through, it's not the last time we're going to face hardship. It's
Right.
not the last time we're going to go through something difficult. So why not gain the skills to transform that now? So we have that skill set for life. And then anything that comes our way isn't able to take us down, and we're able to transform that. And I think that that's some of the greatest lessons we can learn in life.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you because I grew up with this false sense of always trying to reach for something where I'm like, when I make it to this point, then life is smooth sailing and everything's perfect. And not understanding that there's no such thing. Like even when you achieve, like for example, when you achieved your six-figure job and you had the situation that you had dreamed of, it's like there's going to be hardships and other things that you don't expect. And for those of us who did not prepare ourselves for that, that could be devastating. And I can only imagine if I didn't go through the hardships and learn to appreciate that had I gotten to say Hollywood or whatever my dream was at the time, I could have really gone down a really dark path, because I had that unrealistic expectation of, oh, I made it to the point that I thought everything's good and smooth sailing, and it's not. My whole world has crumbled around me. So I completely resonate with what you're sharing with that, and I think it's such a valuable lesson that so many people can get uh, life affirming, you know, nuggets from if they can realize that and turn these what they perceive as negatives into, oh, these are just the ingredients to creating your wonderful dish.
Nolan, can I ask where you're from?
I'm from here. Well, you don't know where here is. I'm here for. I was born and raised in Kaimuki in on
Okay.
Oahu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way
So
I think about everybody's cuisine is
hmm
that what do we do besides make the best of the ingredients that we have?
yeah,
And, like we have to work with what's around us. We have to work with what we've been given, the things that we've been handed, good or bad, right? The colonialization of Hawaii has definitely affected the food culture and the cuisine here. Some ways may be good, some ways may be bad, but those are the ingredients that we've been handed.
yeah,
And in the end, it's also what defines us in a beautiful way, where like the culture and the cuisine of Hawaii is unique because it's using what it has here. Nobody else can replicate it because this is us using those ingredients that are around us. And the
yeah,
same is true for our lives. Like the ingredients that we've been given in our life, nobody else has that. I don't know anybody
mhm,
else who's worked on Wall Street and done the things that I've done. But like that just means I have all of these gifts that nobody else gets that I get to share. And same with you, Nolan. Like the things that have been the ingredients that have been part of your life, they're not for us to waste. They're for us to share, to make more out of. Like even if you look at like other Asian cultures and like fish sauce and things like that, if they didn't have an abundance of fish, they never would have made that. That would never have been something that could have defined their flavor, their profile. You know what I mean? Their cuisine.
yeah,
And it's what makes every single one of us special is what's happened to us in life.
yeah. I mean, I feel like I go through these reminders of that particular lesson pretty often. It seems like, and even as recent as just like a few months ago, when I knew my experiences of growing up and the hardships I had with growing up with a stepdad and my mom and being a single mom up until that point and all these kind of issues that I still carried with me today. I was just like, why can't I get over it? Or like, why is it I'm 30 plus years beyond that time. And instead I was able to realize how much those things um, created, built up, and as part of my foundation. And when I stopped feeling like I had to reject it or just be fine with it and ignore the pain, and instead just embrace like, well, what happened, and then realize, and I'm yet okay now, and I'm have my life that I have now that I really love and appreciate, thanks to coming from that situation and such. So yeah, I totally am right in line with you on that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's the most important thing we can do with life, is not everybody was given the gift of life today, Nolan,
Yeah.
and we were. So what are we going to make out of it?
Hmm.
What are we going to create with this? And no, we don't get to create everything, but we get to be a part of the creation process. So, if we've been given the gift of life today, let's choose to make something dreamy and delicious with it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of creating dreamy and delicious, I know that you had to move on from your career in food, but I understand you still cook, and that's kind of part of some of the coaching that and lessons that you're teaching your clients, right? Can you explain kind of what you are doing with your current career and how you are helping your clients?
Yeah. So, in my coaching and consulting business, I help business owners to transform adversity and overcome, whatever it is that the challenge that they may be facing to really build their dreams. And I love working with business owners because I really believe in helping people build their small business dreams. I think it's such a great way for us to have and experience the freedom and the life that we want when we get clear on what that really looks like. But part of me having my dream business and my dream life is that I still get to share food. So it's something that I love to do. It's sometimes I'll host like classes and I'll host stuff like that, or I'll share videos of me teaching how to cook. Um, but I just love to do it, and it's literally a part of my everyday. And I know I have a skill set that not everybody does. So I like to share value because it's another way that I can help people elevate their quality of life or elevate their results in life, that doesn't really, that doesn't like necessarily maybe change everything, but allows for them in their own daily lives to elevate their results and what they experience. So I'll often give out recipes. I have no kind of like nervousness about people having my secret ingredients or things like that,
Right,
because
right.
I believe it really is, like if I gave you a recipe, you still couldn't make it like I do. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's something about my hands, about the ingredients I have available that makes it special. And so like I really just believe in sharing all this knowledge of the what I call the art and science of transformation, and food is part of that.
Yeah. What is something that you can relate food with, like a life lesson? Because I feel like you're so good at kind of being able to take these things that we just look as like everyday things. Oh yeah, but there's like you have so many metaphors and things, and you've already shared some pretty amazing ones as far as like the fermentation of ingredients and such. But is there a correlation between you wanting people to enjoy food or maybe better their diet, to correlate that with success in business and such for your business clients?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I believe is that everybody has their own definition of delicious. Like what's delicious to Nolan is not necessarily the same thing that's delicious to Diana, not necessarily the same thing that's delicious to anybody. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I think
Yeah.
sometimes, I don't know if you ever had this experience as a kid, but sometimes we can learn from other people like, oh, well, that's disgusting to their own palate, and we start to
Yeah, yeah.
internalize that about ourselves. We start to say, oh no, this thing that I like is not good. It's not, like there's something wrong with me for liking this, like that kind of attitude. And I'm really a believer that what's delicious to every single one of us is something that's special. Not everybody would come home after 6, 7 days of working as a banker, 12 to 14-hour days, and want to cook something, but
Yeah.
that was delicious to me and it was worth pursuing because for some reason it brought me life. For some reason I loved it. And so I think there's something there for all of us where rather than hiding from the things that we personally consider delicious or our personal preferences or the things that we love, the more that we can embrace that, the more that we can find that true authentic self of who we are, why we're here, what we're doing, and then we can contribute to the world in a way that's truly meaningful. Like it's your
Yeah.
experiences in life, and the things that you like, that you enjoy, that make you special. And I think that like rather than run away from the things we think are delicious because somebody else says no, that's that doesn't meet my standard of fine dining or
Yeah.
any of that kind of thing, nobody else's opinion of delicious matters but your own. And if you think about it, like food eating is one of the very few activities in our life that actually engages all of our five senses. There's nothing else
Hmm.
in life that
I never
always
thought of that
engages
way.
all of our five senses. So there's nothing else in life that like
Yeah.
really allows for us to fully feel and experience the way that food does. And when we can apply that to life and life's ingredients, right? How can I taste this more fully? How can I see this more fully? How
Hmm.
can I sense this with all of my senses more fully? I think we just have this opportunity to live life in a completely different way. And that's why my business name is Savor Life, because that's what I believe life is here for us to do. It's for us to savor the bitter, the sour, the salty, and to temper it with more sweetness, richness, and more of whatever we think is delicious.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. When you were preparing food for President Obama, can you tell me what that situation was all about? Like what happened, and were you nervous like how you were when you went to go present to the room of 300 people on stage, or was this like, oh no, I'm in my element, I'm just gonna do what I do?
There were like random security checks that we had to be a part of, to make sure that everything in the kitchen. So they swept the kitchen, they like, background checked us, all that kind of stuff. Um,
Oh wow.
but honestly, I'd say that at that time I was just so jaded. Like we would cook for famous
Oh.
people all the time. So like President Obama is definitely a famous person that I've had the opportunity to cook for, but it didn't feel special to me. And actually, um,
Mm,
I'm glad you asked that because not many people do. But um, one thing that's really special about that is like we think of Michelin cuisine as this like the pinnacle of food. It's like very prestigious and like honored to even be reviewed by them, to receive a single star from
yeah.
them is something of note. But like a lot of times I find that food at that level, like it doesn't always have the same soul, or the people who are working it.
Hmm.
Um, there's a level where like, yes, the love for food is still there, but like it just it kind of doesn't really feel like, like your mom's cooking. It kind of loses its soul a little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like so perfect and pristine, kind of like we talked about, like people who project that perfect life. It's like there can be something that's
Yeah,
kind of missing to
exactly.
it, like where, like, okay, maybe that meal tasted interesting or like those things were delicious, but like you're not craving it the same way that you do like your mom's bowl of soup, or like that thing that grandma made, or like there's so much more to be said for cooking with love. And um, so a lot of times when I've cooked for celebrities or like those sort of things before, like I don't really think much of it because it felt less like I was really cooking for soul. And now when I cook,
Mm.
it is so much more because, I can't do it all day. It's much more of a labor of love. And I think that it's a
Oh,
demonstration that like it doesn't matter if you're serving the most cool or amazing people in the world, like are you serving with love? Are you serving in a way that is meaningful to you? Like that's what truly matters.
that's beautiful. Is there a dish that if that I mean this is like asking like who your favorite child is, but is there a dish that you just like if you had to choose, if somebody's like, okay, this is the only dish you'll ever be able to prepare for the rest of your life, like is there one that you can go, this is the one that means the most to me, whether it's that you enjoy cooking it or that you enjoy eating it, like is there one where you're like, this is the one I would choose?
Yeah, actually. So similar to what I'd shared earlier about, sometimes what we think of as delicious is not delicious to other people. When I was little, there was a dish that
Hmm.
I loved that my nana would make for me, which was chicken afritada. And the closest thing to what it would be like here in Hawaii would be like, pork guisantes, if you've ever had or seen like that
Hmm.
Filipino dish.
Yeah.
It's a version of that, but it's made with chicken. Um, and I don't know why it has a different name. They're similar basically in style, but that was my favorite dish as a kid. And I remember one day like bringing it to school, and I went to school in New York where there's not quite as many Filipinos. It's much more like white.
Right.
And I remember getting teased for it. This thing that I loved, this dish that I loved. And for the longest time, I rejected Filipino food. I rejected my
Mm.
culture because I'd received the messaging that like what I liked was not good,
Yeah.
that it was disgusting, that it was something that wasn't something I should want. And
Hmm.
so I would continue, and I love to share that dish and I love to cook it for people because I cook it with love. I cook it
Yeah.
so that it's delicious because I love it. It is delicious to me. And it's something that like when I cook it, it's healing because it's like an opportunity for me to share something where there was pain before
Mm.
and to bring joy with it again.
Yeah. Oh
So
wow.
yeah, that's probably my favorite thing to cook. But I'd say it's not something I cook often, but it's always something that when I cook it, it's cooked with
Yeah.
meaning.
Oh man, if you ever are willing to give out that recipe, I would love to
Oh, that's
have
a
a
good
shot at
idea.
trying to make that for.
Yeah,
I grew up having to fend for myself, so I kind of had to self teach myself to cook. But I don't I up until now I didn't enjoy it just because it was like so labor intensive and stuff. And now that I have stepkids and I'm married, it's like I was for the longest time is just I thought the excuse was I don't have time to cook. Let's just get fast food and stuff. But recently we've been really wanting to focus and learning and understanding just how valuable good health is as it relates to the foods that you eat. And I really want my family to be healthy and live well. So I've started to cook home meals now, And it's like it's been a different, I think, what to your point, it's like it has a different purpose for me now, whereas before I'd be like, oh, the inconvenience of cooking, but now cooking represents my way of loving them and providing for them. So I get really excited like to learn new dishes to introduce to them and such. So this sounds like the perfect dish to me because it's like it's chicken, it's delicious, and it's cultural. They're part Filipino, so it'd be awesome to introduce that to them. So yeah, if you're ever willing, I would love to get a shot at trying to make it.
Oh yeah, well I do share recipes every single month in my newsletter. I call it the Dreamy
Oh,
Delicious
cool.
Digest. So every single month I share healing meditations, I share food, and I just share like some inspiring quotes. You know, it's not a ton of stuff, but it's something where I feel like, you know, what is a way that I can help everybody experience more dreamy deliciousness. And Nolan, if I can help you also reframe thinking of cooking with your kids, like you're not just doing it, it's not just about that moment, it's about the legacy of skill that you're giving them so that they can cook
Mm,
for themselves, so that they're not reliant upon fast food or restaurants. And
right.
you know, no judgment around, we all eat McDonald's every now and then, you know.
Yeah.
um but
Some
like
of us
that
more than
skill,
others.
yeah, right. But like that skill, you know, that's something, it's not just about the food in that moment, it's about teaching them, it's about like leading by example of like, you know,
Yeah.
you don't have to just do this, like there are ways that you can fend for yourself, that you can again create something when it looks like you've got nothing in the fridge. Like it's
Yeah.
like creativity that I think is that we're helping to cultivate, and to show people, you know, like literally transformation can happen for us every single day. And food is a great example of that because we can transform ingredients, you know, literal food with art and science, right? With knowing that there are scientific principles that we have to pay attention to, thermodynamics, all these different things, chemistry, biology. But at the same time, we get to be creative with it. We get to put our own art. We get to put our own spin into our food.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And your newsletter sounds fantastic. How I definitely want to sign up for that, but how can others, like if any of the listeners want to sign up for your newsletter, is there a link that they can go to get onto your newsletter list?
Yeah, if you just go to my website, www.dianagremillion.com, so just my full name, last name, first name, last name.com. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a link to sign up for the Dreamy Delicious Digest. And yeah, definitely check it out. I, you know, I'll share, like I said, a quote, I'll share recipes in there. Last month, I actually shared um, my husband's favorite cake recipe because it was his birthday.
Oh, fun.
I don't make a, you know, tres leches cake. Have you ever had that? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I don't make tres leches cake. I make cinco leches cake because he's a total milk lover, and so you know, like I just you know kind of gild the lily and make it a little over the top in really fun ways. And that's a lot of what I like to do in my recipes. I'll add flourishes to make something feel really special, um, and that like honor people who really love that thing. So milk is not my thing, but it's my husband. So I'm like, hey, like let me make you a cake that's, you know, again, right, like truly infused with love.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cute. I love that. So, we'll put a link to your website in the show notes and the description of this episode. But are there any other events or things that you wanted to share with us about that our listeners should be aware of, or even if it's just your services that if there's a certain type of client that you're looking to help, anything else that we could learn?
Yeah, I mean, definitely check out my website and connect with me on social media. I'll tell you, we didn't talk too much about this, Nolan, but I'm actually coming off of a crazy period of time where I had that plane, emergency plane landing, and had a car accident and got diagnosed with depression. So I took a couple months to
Oh,
just
wow, I'm
work
so
on
sorry.
myself and heal and recover. And I'm just coming back in. You know, to rebuilding again. So I would say I don't have
Wow.
any events going on quite yet, but I'm getting there. So the best place to find out about them would be either on social media or on my website, again, dianagremillion.com, or on Instagram and Facebook. Um, you know, you can find the links for that too on my website.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll put those links in the description too. But I kind of caught myself because I as you were sharing with me your the situations that you're coming off of, I said I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, and then I realized like I of all people I think you would go like don't be sorry, this is all part of my the process and
Yeah.
part of the next thing. So
Yeah.
um I I will say that I will rephrase that and I'll say I'm so appreciative that you're here and that you have gone through those and are shining and thriving through it. And as a fellow person who is diagnosed with depression and anxiety, it just really is inspiring to hear your perspectives and your story and your to see your braveness, if that's a correct word, to open up with us. It's really inspiring, and you are truly a hero to me. And um, I can see that when I am going through difficulties with my experiences, I'm going to be taking a lot of these gems that you have dropped in into my heart and my mind, and I'm really excited to change the perspective that I've had and just see how much of a difference that's going to make with my projection of the path of where my life takes me. So I really appreciate everything that you shared with us today and all that you're doing for not only your clients but just for the community, just by you infusing all of your positivity and lessons. Is just really incredible, and I'm so glad I got to meet you.
Oh, me too, Nolan. This has been such an amazing conversation. I know I feel like I've gotten to talk this whole time, so I'm like, man, I just can't wait to learn more about Nolan and all the things that you do because I really do believe that like it's this woven tapestry of life that like as we add more to, as we connect more, just becomes richer and more nuanced and all the more
Yeah.
delicious. So I'm so glad that Arliss introduced us. Thank you again.
Well, uh, Dana, I'm thrilled that we are now connected. I'm so glad that you took the time to be with us here today, and I'm looking forward to all the great things that are coming up next for you. And I'm excited to get onto your newsletter and stay connected with you on that. And I'm really looking forward to trying to make that chicken dish. So, but thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Nolan. It's been a pleasure.